Welcome back to the OHIO podcast, everybody. I am your host, Buckeye Boggs. That man over there is the wild man, Chris Wilds. And tonight we're going to give you our Illinois preview for the 2023 season. Now, Chris, Brett Bielema was the new coach there in Illinois
Mhm.
the last couple seasons, and he has changed the culture around at that program. It is no longer the Lovey Smith laughing stock of the Big Ten. It is not the doormat of the Big Ten anymore. Illinois is a tough out. And if you need any evidence of that, just ask the last year's Big Ten champion, the team up north, who should have in all purposes, lost that game last year against Illinois at home, mind
Yeah, the
you.
refs gave them a favor in that, or did them a favor in that one.
So Brett Bielema has got a culture of toughness. They've got some guys that have gone to the pros. He's developed some good talent. They're recruiting a little bit better than they did before, and he's hit the transfer portal very well. And I think all of that combined is got Illinois to where they are fighting for bowl eligibility year in and year out, and they've turned that program around a little bit, Chris. So let's dive into last season, a little bit of history. We got a special guest, Sonny from the Illini Cast, going to talk Illinois football with us, and then we get our predictions for the upcoming season. So let's dive right in. So last year, Chris, the Illini went 8-5 overall,
Mhm.
5-4 in the Big Ten, and this is coming off of a season where Vegas said they were a 4.5 win team. We both said, well, they'll probably be at least 5-7. I didn't put money on them. I wasn't going to be that bold, but I thought that they could get to at least 5 wins. Chris, they did much better than that, man. They were
Yeah.
8-4 during the regular season, 5-4 in the Big Ten, and went bowling last year. Lost to Mississippi State in the bowl game, in a game they should have won. But my gosh, you're going up against a team who just lost their head coach and had all that Mike
Emotion.
Leach
Yeah.
and all that emotion with it and everything, and still gave him one heck of a game. But Illinois had a really good season last year. Again, we talked about it in the Indiana preview. They do not lose to Indiana. They probably are going to win the West. And they lost to Michigan State. Two teams last year that had atrocious seasons. And
Well, and they were right there with Purdue.
yeah, they were and that team up north, they were very, very close to being, believe it or not, a 12-0 football team.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy to think about that. But if you look at their losses, all four of those losses that you see there on your screen were tight football games that they were in on, and they could have won. Historically, this will be Brett Bielema's third season there in Champaign, Illinois. They play at Memorial Stadium, a capacity of 60,670. Their all-time record is 621. Is that 616 and 50 for
50.
a
Yes.
502 winning percentage? They're 8-11 in bowl games, and they've won 15 conference titles over the year, Chris. So that's kind of the historical look and how they did last year. I would like to point out that they beat Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin 3 straight weeks in a row. Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, back to back to back. That is impressive. That is an impressive feat by Illinois. So this, if they can take that momentum from last year and ride it into this year, this is a dangerous football team. So let's bring in Sonny from the Illini Cast, get his impression, see what he thinks. And welcome back to the OHIO podcast. And as you can see, we are joined by Sonny. He is the host from the Illini Cast on the Big Banter Network. Sonny, thanks for joining us, and appreciate you coming on the OHIO podcast and talking about your team, the Fighting Illini, my man.
I appreciate your time, Eric and Chris. It was a privilege. I've been enjoying the previous team preview, so I couldn't wait to get on myself.
Oh, awesome! Thank you so much, man. So let's just start here, Sonny. Illinois is interesting. You guys got you got big Brett Bielema to show up, and it seems like things have really changed for the Illini. So what is the floor and ceiling for the Illinois football team in 2023?
This is one of those seasons for Illinois that you could always easily tell the floor, or you could always easily know the ceiling, but you just knew what the floor was. In our case this year, our over/under for Vegas is 6.5. I don't think it's been that high in 15 years, at least since our Rose Bowl season. At our best, we can hit. Again, this is just me talking. I think we can realistically hit 10-2. If you look at our schedule, it's not that bad. We avoid Michigan, we avoid Ohio State, we have Penn State, but we have them at home, and it's relatively early in the season. So if their young quarterback hasn't adapted yet, and then I think it's the first big noon game on Fox. So who knows? It could be an experience that he's not able to overcome. We have Toledo, Kansas, to open up the season, but that could be a bad thing too. So this is where I come in with the floor. Toledo, you think a MAC team should be an easy run over, but they won the MAC last year. Then you have Kansas, who a couple of years ago when you scheduled them, you're super excited about. Now Lance seems to have turned that program around, and it's in Lawrence. So, we're bringing in a young transfer quarterback. We lose our stud running back. So, the floor, I can realistically, and again, I can't believe I'm saying this because this used to be our ceiling before, but I can say probably like 4 wins is our floor.
Okay. No, that's fair. Fair enough. Chris, next question, man.
Okay, so you've given us the floor and the ceiling. Sonny, what are your expectations for the season personally?
Now, this answer is funny because if you had asked me this during the Lovey era, I don't know if you're gambling folks. I gamble a little too much, more than I should. I would be taking the unders constantly. Okay, if our over under was 3.5, I would be slamming the under. I preface that I say that because now I'm over the moon. I love what Brett's doing here. I think 6.5. Last year was 4.5. Told everyone to slam the over. This year it's 6.5. I feel very confident that we're going to hit about 8 wins this year, barring injury. But that you take into account regardless of a bet. Brett has me excited. I trust his coaching staff. I trust everything he's been saying. The pictures, the workouts, just the belief in the team. It's I'm swallowing the blue and orange Gatorade.
Nice.
Yeah, Sonny. So if this team is 8-4, what would be the strengths of this team that the opponents would need to know about, and then what would be some of the weaknesses that you're afraid of that opponents might exploit?
Well, it starts with the line on both sides. I would argue we have possibly the best defensive line in the conference. We've got who I think is going to be the number one defensive tackle drafted in 2024, Jerry Newton. We have his sidekick, Keith Randolph. And we have younger guys who the SEC supposedly try to poach from us, but who are staying with the grind and believe in Brett. Our offensive line also same thing. We are a little weak at center, but otherwise we have at least 2 potential NFL players there. That's where it's going to start. And it also we have a new running back, but Brett Bielema teams always seem to have 1,000-yard rushers. So I'm not too worried about that. I think we'll figure it out, especially behind the massive offensive line that we have. If teams are going to try to take advantage of us, it's going to be tricky and interesting to watch in the first game, in the second game when we play Kansas, because they got a high-powered offense. Everyone's going to attack our secondary. They're young. One of the cornerbacks is going to either be a freshman or a transfer in. Obviously, we lost 3 players to the NFL this year. We lost our defensive coordinator. Our cornerbacks coach, who I'm a huge fan of, Aaron Henry, he's become our defensive coordinator. So, again, maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid, but I believe in the guy. But I also understand that at the beginning of the season, that's what they're going to attack. They're going to test the young guys, throw it at them and make them prove that they belong in the field.
Follow-up question to that real fast, Chris. I'll let you take the next one. I'm a Bengals fan. We drafted Chase Brown. What are we getting, man?
Grinder. I don't exactly like the way, I think we relied too much on him last year. Okay. I think we could have used him as a decoy a little bit more. He's not a fast guy, but he can get to the second and third level. And I think he's your next starting running back.
Awesome. We need one. Ours got in trouble with the law again. So we got the Bengals got the passing thing down. It's the run game that we need a little help. Now that man over there, he's a Browns fan, so that's all they do over there is run the football. So
Well, when
and you
you got
should.
one of the, I was say, when you got one of the
Yeah.
top backs in the league, that's what you do.
Yeah, you should.
So, Sonny, I got to ask you. You talked about drinking the Kool Aid. How has Brett Bielema changed the culture at Illinois?
He makes me proud to wear this hat out in public. I wasn't exactly excited with the hire at first. I wanted to, he was probably my third option, but that's just because I didn't really research too much about him. Lovey, when he was let go, there was a prominent high school coach in Illinois who had said that Lovey hadn't visited campus in 3 years. We had maybe one Illinois, from commit from the state of Illinois for the past couple of years. We just were ignoring the state entirely, and there's just no way you can do that as a smaller program like Illinois. Brett came in. I think he made 800 phone calls in his first week to all the local high schoolers, and he constantly sends his assistants out. We're all excited. We're at the point now where, again, I can't believe I said the floor of this team is 4 wins. When before, if we hit 4, I'd be high-fiving my group chats and all that. But some people don't like him because, especially on Twitter now, he's kind of adjusting. He likes to go at the big game boomers, and, he'll retweet the lists that list Illinois people and, talk down on the list that ignore Illinois people. But I think you kind of have to do that at a program like Illinois, because we've been so used to being the program that people step over that, we're all kind of, falling back behind him because he's kind of sticking up for us. And it's nice because, again, he's just kind of making being an Illinois fan seem kind of cool.
Yeah. No, that's cool, man, because when you have a coach who feels like he's a part of your fan base, then you instantly gravitate towards him and want to defend him. As opposed to maybe, that's kind of, Urban Meyer did that. He walked in and immediately spoke our language. We're going to hate that team up north. We're not even going to mention their name. It's all about beating them for 365 days out of the year. And even though, Urban has his demons, let's be honest, some even consider him, dumpster juice. We defend the dude because he spoke our language. He felt like one of us. And Ryan Day struggles with that a little bit, to be honest with you. He has more of an NFL persona, and in the NFL, if you lose a game, it's no big deal. Well, it's not like that in college, so at least not around Columbus, Ohio.
Do you think that's a potential future for him, though? The NFL? You think eventually he might just get tired of the expectations and just jump?
I think he's an NFL guy. Yeah, I do.
I'll tell you what, Eric. If he doesn't beat that team up north this year, I'm buying him the bus ticket. I'll ship him out myself.
There's a rumor floating around that Kansas City will be his next job. That
Andy retires?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, that'd be the perfect fit for him, honestly.
It really
got
would.
That quarterback.
It really would. Yeah. A little worried about that. But anyways, that's a different podcast. But what is this podcast is the fact that Ohio State and Illinois are supposed to be rivals. Now, I don't know if you feel that way, but
I'll tell you what, I do feel that way, but
the Illabuck is a terrible trophy, man.
It's a wonderful, cute-looking trophy.
Oh,
I'll tell you why it's a rivalry in my house. My wife is a Buckeye. So she got her degree from the University of Ohio State. So, let's just say, during the Lovey years, I don't hate you guys. I really don't. I would have the Ohio State game on the big TV, and watching the Illinois game on the side TV. So, I get it. We were supposed to, from some of the first previews I saw of how they were going to set up the pods, for the new conferences. Mm-hmm. I saw us linked up with you guys. And I think it was just kind of forcing the whole Illabuck trophy. It would have been awful for me. But, yeah, I can totally – you have so many rivalries. The bottom line is Illinois really doesn't have a rival. It's Northwestern, but not many people follow Northwestern. So, it's a cities – I live right outside Chicago. We're trying to come up with the rivalry. We're no one's biggest rival except for Northwestern. We hate Iowa. Iowa doesn't care about us. Like, we weren't in the top three rivals that they had, that they signed up for in their locked-in games. So for us, the Illinois Trophy is probably forced, but we're just kind of alone here anyway. So for me, I'm just going to enjoy whatever we have.
I will say this though, you know, I don't put them up there as a rival, like a team up north, like a Penn State. But you know what? Juice Williams will always still have me hating Illinois just a little bit.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
play. He was a
yeah,
baller, man.
he was fun. It's funny, we have another Isaiah Williams now, who is one of our, who is our top receiver. So we've actually had three prominent Isaiah Williamses play for Illinois, which is, it's just funny. I don't know how coincidental that is.
Yeah. So, are you looking forward to the elimination of the divisions?
Not at all. I think that's why last season's collapse hurt so much. Being 7-1, fumbling away that opportunity to get to the Big Ten championship game. It could have been huge for recruiting. That's why this year's so important. As I was kind of referencing earlier, our schedule is it's tough, but it's not impossible. There's no game that I look at our schedule that I'm like, okay, we're 100% going to lose. But then you look at our schedule next year. I think we play Michigan. We might play you guys. I know we play USC. So you're talking about, basically that's going to happen from every year on at this point. And without the divisions, I'm a realist. If our program ceiling is 8-9 with the occasional 10-game season, we might be able to sneak into if once college football expands to 12, we might be able to sneak in with a great season, as one of the later seeds. But realistically, at this point now, we're probably not going to be able to be going to any Big Ten championship games for the foreseeable future. So that's why this season is huge for us as a fan base.
I think a lot of the Western Division teams probably feel the same way you do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Because
bet.
the East is pretty tough when you've got Ohio State, you got Michigan, you've got Penn State,
Right.
and now in the West, you do have Wisconsin in there, and Illinois is up and coming, but they're going to have a long way to go to get a Big Ten title.
Yeah. Well, I think we can sneak one in this year, or sorry, we
Yeah,
can make the
the championship
championship
this
this
year.
year. But yeah, winning, maybe my son will see it in his lifetime, and he's 2. So
I
I
don't
don't
know,
know.
man. Don't sell yourself short. You had that team up north
On the
beat.
ropes. Yeah,
You had them beat, man. And
We
then
had him
and
beat.
and then they came right down into our house the very next week and put a butt whooping on us. So, I mean, you had them there. So, you've got some horses. And I tell you, and Chris and I, when we're doing these previews, and we've been breaking down the position groups in the Big Ten and doing our top 10 rankings. And, Ohio State's got a lot of depth on the defensive line. And they've got a lot of guys who hopefully will fill those shoes that they're are expected to fill as 5-star recruits and things. But your defensive line is stacked,
yeah.
dude.
You got
It
studs
is
on that defensive
stacked,
line.
Yeah.
and that
We have 2
that
guys who I
can
think can go in the first round. Yeah,
that can win you a lot of football games, right there.
100%. Yeah.
Your defensive tackle may not be the best in the Big Ten. He may be the best in the nation.
Right. I mean, Big Banter had a tweet earlier doing a player spotlight on Newton, and again, I said first DT draft in 2024, lock it in now. But at the same time, if he gets hurt, again, we still have good linemen, but no one at his caliber. Like it's
Right.
going to be an adjustment because again, we have an excellent coaching staff who's coached up our players, but we don't have the depth that someone like you guys have. You have 4 or 5 stars, on your bench. We don't. Brett has only recruited 3 cycles right now, and Lovey, as I told you earlier, he kind of quit recruiting by the time he knew his time was done. So, you're right. Absolutely, trust me. That Michigan, one of my friends is a fan of that team up north, as you guys like to refer to, and we watched that game together. And he refused to make eye contact with me with some of the calls right before that field goal. And I think Brett shares my disdain for that call. I don't know if you recall
Uh,
seeing the tweet from him, but
That
yeah.
was the worst officiated game in the Big Ten last season.
phone call came in. Illinois was not going to ruin the big game.
You sound like my dad. My dad tries to tell me that every game is fixed now. He's
You
like,
know what? I don't agree with that on every game, but last year I felt very much that same way watching that Illinois Michigan game.
Georgia Ohio State felt a little weird at the end too there,
Yeah,
man.
a little bit.
Oh shoot. But hey, you live just outside of Chicago. Last question, Sonny. We appreciate you having on. You live just outside of Chicago. You're an Illinois fan. As you said, you kind of have Northwestern is supposed to be your big rival. Man, the news that came out of Northwestern, dude. Pat Fitzgerald, I thought he was Northwestern football. He was the perfect coach for them. And these allegations are just wild. What's it like up there? Number one, since you're so close to Chicago, what's it feel? What's it like up there with this? And number two, as an Illinois fan, how do you respond?
I mean, I'll answer as an Illinois fan first.
Okay.
Asked me a couple years ago, and I would have been elated, not at the reason he got let go, but Fitz and Northwestern are just so perfect for each other.
Mm-hmm.
They were beating our brains in with recruiting. They were winning Big Ten West titles basically every other year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but things had kind of turned around once we got Brett into tow. Like I think we were putting up 40 spots on them because they're a rivalry game at the end of the season. We've been beating them pretty handedly. So I was kind of secretly, not minding our beating down on Northwestern. But outside Chicago, I think everyone's just confused, even now, because this happened just a couple weeks ago. And if you were to give a list of every coach in D1, coaching football, and say who would be the most likely to be fired for X reason, I don't think Fitz would be anything but the last person you'd imagine
I know.
that happening. I can't really comment on what happened because I guess we'll see once some actual like lawsuits are thrown out there or some charges made, because then you can kind of really see what truly happened. We hear stuff from former players now, and you just don't know. I'm not saying it did or didn't happen, but of course there could be vendettas, or it could be worse than we thought. So it's one of those where I think right now Northwestern media, who pretty much run the state, a lot of them are embarrassed. It was actually the Northwestern student newspaper that basically outed the entire program, and basically the professionals almost had no choice but to follow up on the same stories that the kids broke. So it's unfortunate. I love they're our locked in rival along with Purdue, and I like it when Northwestern is down, but not for this reason. I would have loved to have Brett and Pat just go at it for the next couple of years, and just prove on the field that we were the superior program. To have this kind of dark spot, it doesn't feel right.
That's a good answer, man. Yeah, I think confusion is probably the best term to describe things right now. Feels very confusing on the outside, and if you're saying they're feeling confusing on the inside, then I think that also gets you to question some things. Like what is the motivation here? What is true? What is not? What's exaggerated? Does he have a point in his lawsuit? This is a story it's got some legs. It's gonna go
And
on a while. This thing
and
is not done anytime soon.
and sadly, like we talked about, we actually talked about this a little bit last week.
Yeah.
But sadly, as we spoke about, this may be something we never know, because I think the university goes out of their way to keep this from going to trial. They're going to pay Fitzgerald his contract so that there's nothing there to argue about. We're never
Yeah,
going to know. They're a private university, so nothing has to be disclosed unless there is an actual arrests made somewhere along the way. This is going to be just buried and forgotten about eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they had the same issue with something similar with their baseball team. So that whole athletic department's just trying to clean out some fires over there. So I wish them luck, but not really.
That's Sonny from the Illini cast. Buddy, thank you so much for joining us and previewing the Fighting Illini 2023 football team with us, man.
I appreciate your time, guys. ILL.
There you go. Hey, where can people find your podcast?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. At Illini Cast. We haven't released our first episode yet, but we're planning on doing it for the Big Ten Media Days.
Cool.
And if there's any breaking news for the Illinois program, hopefully nothing like what happened at Northwestern. But me and
Right.
my co-host Austin will try to start throwing out podcasts out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Look them up on Twitter if you have them. They will be dropping those podcasts on Big Banter very, very soon. Looking forward to collaborating with you in the next for the season and next few years, Sonny. Thank you so much, my man.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
We'd like to thank Sonny from the Illini cast for joining us here, Chris. Just another great guy here at Big Banter, and another young podcaster getting into it for the first time. Going to do great, I think. The Illini cast is something that you definitely want to keep your eye on. I think these guys are going to do a great job in the podcasting world with that podcast, Chris. So let's dive into their lineup, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at what they've got offensively and defensively for this year. Let's start with the offense first. Out is Chase Brown at running back. Of course, we talked about him with Sonny. He went to my Cincinnati Bengals to add some depth to the running game there for them. In at quarterback is transfer Luke Altmaier, a redshirt sophomore. Reggie Love III takes over for Brown. He did see some time last year as a redshirt sophomore. The offensive line has got some youth to it, but they do have a couple seniors in Julian Pearl and Isaiah Adams, and then here comes the underclassmen: Josh Kreutz, Zy Chrysler, and Josh Geske. At tight end, you got one of the better names, Tip Raymond. I love Tip. That's a great name, Tip. Redshirt junior. And then at wide receiver, Casey Washington, who's a senior. Isaiah Williams, there's that name, redshirt junior. They've had several Isaiah Williams, as Sonny's pointed out to us. And Pat Bryant as a junior wide receiver. Chris, what are your thoughts about this offense that Brett is bringing to the table this year for the Fighting Illini?
Well, I think they're going to have to be very run heavy, um, given the young transfer quarterback, given the fact that you've got a new running back, given the fact that you do have some youth on that offensive line. I I look at them; they're not prolific in the way that Ohio State is prolific. However, they're going to experience some of the same issues, given the youth of the line and the new starting quarterback. And I think when that happens, you've got to lean on toughness and on the running game. And I think Brett Bielema is a guy that can actually get his guys to do that. They do have, I think, a great wide receiver in Isaiah Williams, who's got a lot of potential. Again, not you can't mirror them to Ohio State given the difference in the talent, but I think we're going to see a lot of similarities in maybe the makeup of how they have to run their offense. Um,
I would describe their offense as solid.
it's solid,
This to me, I feel like Brett Bielema will get them moving in the right direction. That they don't make many mistakes.
and
They
that's going to be the key.
learning to sustain drives and being successful on third down is going to be the learning curve for this team and
Yeah,
this
they're not going to go
offense.
out there and score on 25-second drives. They're just
No.
not. What they need to do is run 7, 8, 9 minute drives, keep the ball out of the hands of the opposing offense. We're going to talk about their defense here in a second, which has some really great talent on it. Um, and, they're going to depend heavily on Isaiah Williams and Tip Ryman in the passing game, I think. Um, and you're right, Tip. Is that not a great name, especially for somebody who's catching the ball?
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, I think they're solid. I think they have a lot of potential. They're going to be as good as that offensive line carries them.
Yeah, I agree. Keep it. They've got to learn to sustain drives. Third down is going to be big for them. Keep the score. The defense is going to keep them in a lot of games. So they're going to be in a lot of low scoring, old school Big Ten style games. And Brett Bielema does a
That's
very
his
good
style of
job.
ball. Look at what
He
he did at
does a
Wisconsin.
he does a very good job of winning close football games. It's his thing. So, I would say that this offense is going to be something maybe in a year that we're going to have to definitely deal with, but that's going to be a little bit of a growing time for them, especially at the beginning of the season. Defensively, Chris, let's take a look at what we think is going to be one of the better defenses in the Big Ten, starting with up front, the best defensive line next to Ohio State, in my opinion, in all the conference, with what I feel is the best defensive lineman in the conference. Now, I don't know if you saw today or not, Chris, but the Big Banter released their top 10, and they had JTT from Ohio State number one. And I love that. I'm an Ohio State fan,
I
but
do too, but he didn't show the consistency that this kid had.
exact my point exactly. That is exactly my point, Chris. I don't. I mean, yes, I'm a homer. I will admit it, but I've got to be flat out honest with you. This guy is the real deal, and he. I'm not saying JTT can't be a higher draft pick when the season's over, but as of right now, Jerzon Newton is a better draft pick.
Oh,
He's
arguably he's the best defensive tackle possibly in the nation, not just in the
yeah.
conference.
Yeah, and so you have him, you have Keith Randolph Jr., and you got Edwards. Um, Keith Randolph Jr. is another really good one. This defensive line is really good. And then you look at the linebackers. You got Tariq Barnes, a senior, Seth Coleman, a redshirt junior, Dylan Rozier, a redshirt sophomore, and Gabe. I think it's Jacob. Sorry. A sophomore. This is this is a good defense. This is a good linebacker core led by Tariq Barnes, and to go along with those three defensive linemen that are really good. Man, those front seven are legit. And then let's take a look at the back end. Now they lose Devin Witherspoon and Jartavius Martin and Sidney Brown, who were all drafted in the NFL. Three defensive backs drafted in the NFL. So if there's a weakness on this defense, it's in their defensive backfield trying to replace three NFL talents. Okay. But at cornerback, you got Tavian Nicholson and Tyler Strain, a junior and a sophomore. And then at safety, you bring in a transfer in Nicario Harper, a senior, and Matthew Bailey, a sophomore. So they're young, they're inexperienced. If there's a weakness on this defense, it's in the defensive backfield. But as we know, Chris, a good defensive line can cover up weaknesses and holes in a defensive backfield because literally they're getting so much pressure on the quarterback that all they've got to do is just cover for a couple seconds. On special teams, you got a senior kicker in Caleb Griffin and a sophomore punter in Hugh Robertson. The Illini defense is definitely the strength of this team.
Absolutely. And Eric, if it's me, and it's not something that's been real popular here lately, but if I'm Brett Bielema, given my talent in the front seven, man, I'm playing my corners bump and run if I can. Hold those guys in as long as you can, because that defensive line is going to get to somebody. They're going to
All
disrupt the pocket.
all depends on how good
Your
those
safeties have to be
those
good.
safeties are going to be up over the top. If they play a cover two and they play on the line of scrimmage at the corner and they play a cover two and they've got good linebackers who can cover or play the middle of the field well in the passing game, there's no reason to believe that this 3-4-4 defense cannot create havoc for offenses. I think the defense is definitely the best part of this team. It's solid. They're going to create turnovers. They're opportunistic.
Yes.
We've seen it for the last couple of years with Brett Bielema. Their defenses create turnovers really well with this scheme. Um, there's no reason to believe that, given the talent that they have up front, that they're not going to do it again and keep games within striking distance for this young offense.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, Eric, we're going to take a look at their schedule here in a minute. It's not the toughest in the Big Ten.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
It's
This is
manageable.
definitely a team that can get to bowl contention.
Yeah, let's take a look at it, shall we?
Yeah,
All right. So they begin the season on September 2nd against Toledo at home. Toledo is expected to win the MAC again this year, so this is not a gimme. This is actually a pretty decent opening game for them. I do not think Illinois is just going to blow Toledo out. This is going to be a close game, in my opinion. I think this is actually a really good litmus test for them.
and they've got a very good quarterback who we saw in the shoe last year, Eric, who a lot of people thought was going to actually transfer to a bigger program.
Mm.
Very good dual threat quarterback from Toledo. So, yeah, they'll have their hands full.
Then they go on the road to last year's darling, Kansas. Again, that's not a gimme. That's another program, a lot like Illinois was a year ago, kind of up and coming. And now they've got to go on the road for that one. Then they come home against Penn State. Now, this is the big one from the crossover that they've got to play before they get Florida Atlantic at home, which should be a W. On the road, September 30th to close out the month of September at Purdue. And I think Illinois will probably be favored in that one, but that's going to be interesting given what we've learned about Purdue and the fact that we have no idea what Purdue is going to be like. By then, we probably will know, and we'll see if that's going to be a good game. They open up the month of October at home against Nebraska before going on the road at Maryland. Boy, circle that one as a game I can't wait for. I think that is, you
Yeah,
want to talk about a contrast of styles. You've got a great offense and a terrible defense in Maryland versus a terrible, well, we'll see what kind of
unknown
offense,
offense.
unknown offense versus a great defense in Illinois. Like that game is going to be incredibly interesting. Then they take on Wisconsin at home. Can they nip Wisconsin in their home stadium? That's another one. That's I mean,
That's going to be a big ask.
when we preview Wisconsin, this is a game that I have circled for Wisconsin as you better watch out. Illinois beat them before with worse teams, mind you. Okay? So that was Lovey Smith's biggest win
What, and
ever.
I'll tell you what, Brett Bielema probably just would love the idea of getting a win
Another one,
against
yeah.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
Then they go into bye week. They finish the season at Minnesota, home against Indiana, at Iowa, home against Northwestern. Those road games that they have this year in the Big Ten are not easy.
No.
Iowa, Minnesota, Maryland, Purdue. Um, those are not easy road games. And I think Vegas took that into account when they gave them a 6.5 over under. Now, Chris, I went with 6-6, and I'm saying avoid betting this team. I do
Yeah,
not.
I agree.
Yeah, you're at 7-5, which is just over half a game over what they're saying. So at 6.5, Vegas is daring you to take 7.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I don't know if you should, even though you gave them 7 there
I'll tell
because
you what, I feel pretty good about it. Um, but at the same time, there's a lot of chances that they could get tripped up there. So,
yes, absolutely. So I went with the safe bet and say they get 6 wins, they find 6 wins, they go bowling because there's a lot of games in there that I think are coin tosses. Now, I'm gonna give you the games I think they win easily. And we'll go from the bottom up.
mhm.
Northwestern,
Yes.
Indiana,
Hmm.
Florida Atlantic.
Hmm.
There's 3 auto wins. Can you find 3 more in the other 9 games? I think you can.
Yeah.
I think they go bowling. What do you think?
I agree. I do think that the 7-5 is achievable. I think that, Kansas, Kansas was, like you said, last year's darlings, but, they've lost some guys this year. So I think that they can get Kansas. I think they'll beat Toledo, but don't sleep on Toledo. I wouldn't want to bet that game, the first game of the season. I don't know that I want to bet that, but
It'll be interesting what the over under will be as you get closer to kickoff on what that game's going to be. You have home field advantage. they're scary good for
I
a
do,
MAC team,
yeah.
man.
I do like them against Nebraska because it's at home. So that would be at the sixth. The seventh game is one where I'd say that they may have to. They're going to have to play a perfect game, but I think they could get a seventh,
It's either going to
possibly
be
Iowa.
Minnesota or Wisconsin. I don't think it'll be Iowa. Not in
I think
Kinnick.
I think I think it could be Iowa.
Not in Kinnick, man. If Iowa's rolling like I think they are going to be this year, that late in the season, the only way Iowa drops that game is if they're looking ahead to Nebraska for some reason. Then maybe I could see that. But yeah,
So what
I
you're saying
see.
is the definition of a trap game.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I do. Hey, speaking of trap games, real quick, I know this has nothing to do with Illinois, but I think the biggest trap game on the schedule is Notre Dame at Duke the week after they play Ohio State.
yeah,
I could see Duke beating them.
yeah.
They put all their eggs in that basket against the Buckeyes, then they go on the road and to North Carolina and Duke nips them.
Especially if they come off a demoralizing loss to the Buckeyes.
Or a ginormous win. Either or.
So I'm
All
Brandon
right.
Jensen, lead betting analyst at Big Banter Sports. Glad to be on the show. And then we will go on to Illinois at 6.5, over at minus 120, under at plus 100. Chase Brown's gone. That's a majority of the offense, and that is going to be hard to replace. A new quarterback for a third straight season. I think last year was a fairy tale, and I don't think it gets repeated this year. I see 4 wins for sure with Toledo, FAU, Indiana, and Northwestern. But can I find 3 more with Kansas, Penn State, Maryland, Purdue, Nebraska, Minnesota, and Iowa? I don't think so. I think 6-6 is possible, but I don't think 7-5 and up is going to happen for him.
Your final thoughts for the Illini for 2023. Brett Bielema, hey, if you would have
I
said
believe
to
in what he's
me,
doing.
I didn't want to be. I don't want to be. I still remember Brett Bielema and Jim Tressel, man. That was a rivalry, man, back in the 2000s. And I don't want to like the guy, but he's doing good stuff there, man.
Yeah,
And the Big Ten's better when more teams are better, and
yeah,
Illinois is just better. And Brett Bielema's got him going in the right direction. They're building something over there that is going to be competitive. And I think one of the teams that will benefit greatly from not being in divisions is going to be Illinois.
yeah. I could see that. I mean, however, they're also going to be challenged a lot more because there's a bigger chance that they're going to see Ohio State. Say where right now they see Penn State next season. There could come a year where they see Ohio State and Michigan, or Ohio State and Penn State, or Michigan and Penn State in the same season, which
Yep.
obviously is going to be
And then throw maybe a USC in
a
there, and then you're
USC in
like,
there. Yeah,
three really really difficult games. But
but you know
I
what? I don't know that you bet against Brett Bielema in some of these. You know, he's
I will say this: if in the games where they were not favored to win, it was a guaranteed take the under.
yeah,
When Illinois was not favored to win, and you took the under in that game, you made money last year.
well, yeah,
And
because
that
he's going to turn into a dogfight.
exactly, he's going to make it a mosh pit. He makes the game a mosh pit. The prettiness is taken out of it. The Circus Olay offenses don't work. You've got to win in a mosh pit. You got to win a dogfight against him and his defenses. And so um, that's why you take the under a lot of times when if Illinois is not favored to win that football game. Any other last thoughts?
No, I'm with you. I just think he's doing great things over there. You know, we all remember crying Birdie and the comments he made about Ohio State and recruiting and this and that and the other. But you know what? I love him. I love him in the Big Ten. I don't think he was a good fit in the SEC. I think that Illinois has got a great coach for a lot of years coming. He may not get him to a championship in the Big Ten because that's an awful big ask. But you know what? He's going to make them relevant in the Big Ten and relevant in the nation. and I think he's going to be great for their program.
Like, share, subscribe really does truly help out the channel. Hit that thumbs up. That helps the algorithm, reaches it out to more people, much like yourself who've watched and enjoyed this video. And make sure you check out our other great previews. We've done Indiana, Michigan State, Iowa,
Purdue.
Purdue, now Illinois. And next up on deck is going to be the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. That'll be coming your way in just a few days. Take care, everybody. Go Bucks.